Hello, and a very warm welcome to today's session of the Living Bridge Conversations, the live series. It's brought to you by iGlobal, the multimedia hub for and about global Indians. My name is Aditi Khanna, and I'm going to be your host for today. And I'm joined by Kishan Bhatt to talk about legal tech, mergers, politics, and much more. A little bit about our guest. Kishan, a solicitor-advocate, is a partner at Taylor Rose MW, specializing in areas of commercial, corporate, property, and dispute resolution. Besides, he's a mediator and founder of a legal tech platform called Law for Me. Alongside his busy legal career, Kishan is also very politically active with the Conservative Party and the All-Party Parliamentary Group for British Hindus. Let's find out more from the man himself. Hello, Kishan. Welcome to our show.
Hi, Aditi. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. And it's a topic I know very little about, so I'm really excited. I want to find out more from you. But before we dive right in, a quick word for our viewers as well. This show is yours too, so do drop in your comments, your questions, any little technical details you want clarification on from Kishan, and we'll pick them up in the course of our conversation as we go along. So now to our questions, Kishan. Let's start with the very basic, which is legal tech. Tell us more about that to begin with, and then your platform, Law for Me. How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Aditi, for having me on today on the show. I've always been interested in legal tech because I think that is the future of the provision of legal services, and certainly many lawyers have to become accustomed to that. FinTech has now evolved and is gaining a lot of traction, and I feel that legal tech has been almost left behind, but I think slowly catching up. So Law for Me is a website that I created, which at the moment is a minimum viable product. And I have a tech team looking into artificial intelligence and machine learning to see and explore how users can obtain legal answers to legal questions without using a lawyer or using legal services, or create legal agreements without having to use a lawyer, and to see how dispute resolution tools such as online mediation and arbitration can be developed to help resolve disputes without people having to go to court or businesses having to go to court. And for this next stage of development, it's now going to require some level of funding, and we are actively looking for Series A funding. So happy to reach out to private equity firms or incubators that find this area of interest. It is a platform that will generate leads for my team at Taylor Rose to service, but because I think it's difficult to completely technologize legal services, especially when legal services are provided for dealing with disputes. Human touch is always needed to understand the rationale behind conflict and to think of strategies that can help overcome that conflict. And quite often that is very subjective and emotional. Sometimes businesses will always want sort of bespoke agreements created, and that will always require a level of human involvement.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we ourselves noticed a lot of things moving online, especially during lockdown. Even hearings and some of these mediations. So, if you can talk a little bit about your role as an international mediator, how do you see that developing in the future, both here in the UK and internationally?
Sure. So I'll explain what mediation is. I'm an accredited mediator with the ADR Group and ADR ODR International. Mediation is a process whereby a mediator tries to resolve a dispute between two parties. So you're effectively mediating between one and mediating between the other, and there's various strategies to deploy to try and get the parties to agree to a settlement. I'm very passionate about mediation. I think the court systems are very expensive, heavily inundated because of COVID. So outcomes are not being reached as quickly as some people will hope. And also I think that it is quite stressful, and judges are very proactive on making sure the parties actually go to mediation. And it's almost, in family law, it's becoming pretty much mandatory. You have to do a mediation assessment before any husband or wife or lodges a claim in courts. So there is a greater emphasis in the English legal system for mediation, and quite interestingly, actually derives from, in my view, from the panchayat system in India, which before colonial rule, the question was how are Indians in India resolving disputes, and quite often you would have the panchayat system, which was developed there, whereby an elder person in a village would resolve disputes between two parties without having to have something so formal. So mediation is flexible, very informal process. It's a process which creates creative outcomes, and the emphasis is always on creating and sustainable commercial relationships, which can evolve over time and can lead to even better agreements. In terms of what's happening in the future of mediation, there's a big emphasis, and certainly something I'm pushing myself is on mandatory mediation, whether or not mediation should become a mandatory thing for civil commercial disputes. That would mean that parties would have to do mediation first before they go to court. And there are various arguments for that. We've had the Singapore Convention on mediation, which has led to very favorable outcomes between different countries and different signatories of countries that have signed up to the Singapore Convention. And as a result of that, a lot of the countries have actually made mediation mandatory, which has almost replaced the court system. And you've got countries such as Greece and Italy that adopted mandatory mediation, and it's interesting to see how that's evolving over time. I'm heading out to Dubai next week for a conference on negotiation with ODR International, and I'm going to be looking at how mediation is evolving out there in Dubai as well. And I think that there is a greater emphasis on legal tech and also mediation, some new creative ways of making sure that relationships are well commercialized. And I think the role of a mediator is going to be very important in the years ahead.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, what's your own view on whether mediation should be mandatory or not? I'm just curious, listening to you.
So my view is, and I've actually wrote a paper on this. My view is that mediation should be mandatory, with some exceptions. So, for example, if there is a criminal justice issue or a human rights issue, those kind of things, can't really be resolved by mediation as such, and it's more kind of a particular party looking for justice in the courts. And I think those kind of things, mandatory mediation might not be there for those matters just yet. But I think for everything else, commercial disputes, employment law disputes, family disputes, and also general, personal injury claims or clinical negligence claims, I think they should all be subject to mandatory mediation. I'm a big believer of it. I think the emphasis on the key is having a good mediator, and I think mediation perhaps should be more of a regulated industry, just like lawyers are regulated, to make sure that the quality of services are very high. Many lawyers are mediators because they understand the legal system, they understand strategies, they understand negotiation, so lawyers can be good mediators because of that, and they understand the legal context. So if mediation doesn't work, then court is your next option. So you have to understand what could happen in court. So I think my view is that mediation should be mandatory, and certainly there should be a greater emphasis on pushing for that. I think it really helps save costs for both parties. Litigation is very expensive. It's time consuming, it's stressful. And like I said before, mediation can lead to very creative outcomes. But I think what we need to do is create a strong regulatory framework to ensure that mediation is, the quality of mediation is very high, so that it can actually lead to higher chances of settlement. And there's various techniques that are deployed to try and ensure that that does happen. So there's some great training providers out there. and I'll continue to work with a few of them. And I think that if we get good mediators on board, it should be made mandatory.
Great. Now, I mean, that just sounds something almost like you're doing for the greater good in a way. But we'll talk about that in a bit as well. But I'm just curious. I mean, one of the fields you focus on is also mergers. What are the current trends there? And with the COVID situation and everything, have things really kind of slowed down? Would you say?
Yeah, it's a great question. We live in very volatile times, as we all know, and mergers and acquisitions generally tend to follow those kind of trends. I think, in my view, there's economic optimism and there's abundant capital out there to put corporate and private equity and buyers on a collision course almost for sought after deals. Because of COVID, we've had some companies that have gone into administration, or there's some companies that are just not working out because of the heavy impact of COVID. And also now we're seeing loads of employees being made redundant. I'm getting a lot of issues and claims around that. And the foundation of deal making, I think, in 2021, it does continue to focus on recalibrating strategy and accelerating the adoption of technology in the wake of COVID-19. And as uncertainties have lifted, I think business leaders can feel a bit more confident in a strong economic recovery. And there's loads of indicators for that, such as GDP rates and high consumer price index. I think that we'll see a lot of more mergers now, because I think companies and businesses like in the SME industry, and also not even SME but larger corporate corporations, are seeing the importance of merging, of pooling together resources, pulling together knowledge, pulling together employees to try and fight what's a very difficult time. And I think COVID certainly is a difficult time. And I think what businesses must do and what directors of companies must do is plan 10 steps ahead. We've got COVID-19 now. Is that going to lead to a potential recession? There's question marks about that. We're at the moment, think there's some easing, but there's some economists out there that feel that we could lead to a recession in the future. So it's all about future proofing, and we're seeing a lot more mergers as a result of that. And we're seeing some businesses that are simply looking to sell. And there's private equity companies out there that will be happy to acquire those businesses and possibly merge them or grow them with other companies. So I think that we're going to see larger companies in terms of growth of companies as overall. And I think there's some really high sought after deals we've seen for technology and other innovative sort of capabilities, especially those that tackle sort of climate change issues and green kind of products or green services. We're seeing a lot of that. And of course, we know about the increase in interest rates, and that's being carefully watched. And we're expected to maybe even remain, it's still relatively low, so remain relatively low and so there'll be ready access to cheap capital. And private equity fundraising has been, quite brisk in the United States, for example. I've seen interest rates very low as a result of that. And I think we're seeing a lot of countries such as the United States, where interest rates are low, trying to acquire globally, as well as rather than just within the United States or just within the UAE, for example, Dubai. I think there's a lot of opportunity for acquisitions globally within the UK.
Okay. Wow. No, that sets the scene really well for us. And now, as we're reaching the halfway point, Kishan, my question to you, listening to everything you've just said, I wonder how you define job satisfaction for you, because it just sounds like you just mentioned something which I don't think many lawyers do think about, which is helping people keep their costs low. If anything, there's this feeling that once you get into that legal hassle, there's lots of money to be spent there. So you're looking at all of those things. I mean, so how would you define job satisfaction for you?
I think, John, yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I work in a very good firm, Taylor Rose, which has a very as a thought leader in the consultancy model, which looks at helping lawyers, entrepreneurial lawyers, or even those that are looking to develop their own practices with that want to go into a self-employed model whereby they get quite a good percentage of their billings. And I think that is a new model. And that new model really creates, a very good life balance, work-life balance. And I think that's very important in any kind of job satisfaction is to, you want to spend time with your families and friends and your other social commitments. And I think that having a consulting model is very attractive. So I'm constantly growing my team at Taylor Rose, and I offer a very similar sort of level of comfort for lawyers that are junior lawyers that are entrepreneurial, that maybe want to be supervised still, but want to think about growing their businesses and growing their practice, and rather than being a director or starting their own law firm, which is very daunting because of the regulations and the indemnity insurance costs, or rather than being part of a board where they have to undertake a lot of management duties and get involved in office politics, which no one wants to do. This is a new model, the consultancy model, which has been going on for some time, and Taylor Rose has been the thought leader in that model, and I think at the forefront of developing those kind of consultancy lawyers, which I think is the new breed of lawyers that you will see a lot more of. And they are lawyers that are a lot more happier. They can charge rates as they wish, and usually because their overheads are quite low, generally speaking, they can work from home, work remotely, use technology to the best of their ability. We've got all that geared up for lawyers that they can do very well with their charge out rates. So I think that there's some creative things going on, and my job satisfaction is all about my contribution, and I would define it as my contribution to the legal industry, and certainly my contribution to society as a whole. Contribution to the legal industry is being creative and thinking outside of the box for clients and for lawyers as well, and how they can grow their practices for clients and how we can service them better. And that we've got very creative retainers we can offer them, and also in terms of contribution to society is we help young entrepreneurs or SMEs really grow fast and rapidly, and we can give them really good ideas on that.
Wow, no, that all sounds music to our ears as people who may need legal services at some points in our lives. So there are lawyers like Kishan out there. You heard it here, so get in touch. But in the meantime, it's time for a quick break. Kishan, we'll be back right after this.
iGlobal Radio is the brand new hub of podcasts for and about global Indians. News, views, interviews, wellness, money matters, and much, much more. Tune in to iGlobal Radio at iglobalnews.com. iEntertainment is brought to you by iGlobal for all the latest film and series reviews, star interviews and cinema listings covering Bollywood and beyond to reflect a truly pan-Indian entertainment spectrum. Check out the latest at iglobalnews.com.
Great. And we're back to today's session of the Living Bridge Conversations, which is curated by iGlobal to bring you many such insightful topics from law and politics to food, music, yoga, Ayurveda, and much, much more. So do stay tuned at iglobalnews.com and at iGlobal social media channels for updates and on our regular streams with a galaxy of guests that embody the British Indian living bridge. And of course, you as our iGlobal readers and viewers, you're at the heart of these conversations. So do join in with your questions in the comments box. We'll pick them up as we go along. And now we come back to our conversation today, which is with Kishan Bhatt. We've just been talking to him at length about his legal career, and the kind of work he's involved with, from mediation to dispute resolutions and other mergers, etc. But now, Kishan, let's change track a little bit. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your activities in the political arena. Now, I mean, you've just told us so much about your day job, which sounds really busy. So how do you actually find time to also be politically active? And what are the kind of things you like to get involved in?
Yeah, sure. So it is always difficult to balance life sometimes, but I am just someone who doesn't like to sit idle. And, it's all about organization at the end of the day. And, you can't get involved in so many things, and you have to say no to a lot of things. And it's important sometimes to say yes to those things that you think are going to be valuable to you or to a wider cause. So I'm quite selective, and I've got a great team at Taylor Rose, and they're doing a great job in various areas that I practice in. So it does free up some of my time. So in terms of politics, I'm passionate about issues. Always have been. I've done a degree in politics. I'm passionate about climate change, about economic development, getting young people more entrepreneurial, passionate about local issues as well as those global ones. And I get, because of my legal background, I do a lot of work under the Equality Act, and to help fight discrimination. Also a lot of work on gender rights as well. So there's various things that I've always been, there's general synergy and collaboration between law and politics. And I've been involved in the Datva program. There's a program called Datva, which is led by a group of aspiring writers. And through Datva, I've released a book called Broken Politics, which I wrote, and it's available on Amazon. That was a very good project that I undertook, which looked at the role of politics in society and how it can change, and how there's various tools out there that can help develop it further. And I also looked at the how our dharmic beliefs in the Indian system can help play a role in UK politics. At the moment, I'm involved in sort of grassroots level politics at the local level. I know you spoke to my great friend Pranav as well, and I've seen his videos also, very similar to him, looking at more local issues at the moment, things like planning issues, or looking at how the roads are developing near where I live, how businesses are getting more involved and are able to collaborate with each other locally. And that's at the micro level. At the macro level, I'm helping organisations with causes such as lobbying government on fundamental issues. And you obviously seen the news about the cricket player Azim Rafiq and the issues in relation to discrimination there. So looking at those kind of issues as an example of how we can lobby government successfully to make sure that legislation is passed that can help organisations tackle these fundamental problems.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've touched upon it a little bit already, Kishan, but as someone who's actually deeply involved at the grassroots level of this, what are some of the big challenges you find? And not everyone's as keen as, say, you're sounding about getting involved, getting your hands dirty, as it were, with the little tasks. So, what are the challenges, and how can people overcome them? Maybe.
I think that it's very important to get your hands dirty and to look at the small things. And I think that goes for everything in life. I think that sometimes people try and go for the bigger picture, but they forget that the little picture is just as important. I think a great example is that of Barack Obama, who before he became president was very much a grassroots politician. Looking at local issues, looking at fundamentally how things are happening on the ground, and that certainly placed him in a very good stead when he was able to when he was president and becoming dealing with more national issues. I think it's important to know what your neighbours' problems are and what your community's problems are. And it's not only just problems, but it's also looking at creative ways in which we can further develop local politics. And that is, I'm a big believer of technology, as you know. So I think he's utilizing technology in the right way to help deal with some problems creatively. And I think some of the other challenges that people generally face is accessibility and knowledge. That's always been a problem in politics overall. We've seen that on a national scale with Brexit, in my view, whereby the accessibility of knowledge was not quite there. So I think accessibility, knowing how people can get involved, understanding the process, understanding the dynamics for it is quite important. And I think politics can be defined as a capital P at a macro level, and also a small p at a micro level. So politics doesn't have to be a politician elected to represent the people. It could be, for example, you working in a charitable organization looking at a fundamental cause, or it could be you as a scientist looking at developing new ways to tackle climate change or to eradicate poverty, and that could be portraying your views at a more of a micro level and trying and understanding how we can get it to legislation. I think that process and that link perhaps isn't very well educated or accessible to people.
And there's something you just mentioned just now about bringing more of your dharmic values into politics. So just tell us a little bit about that. I mean, how have you tried to do that on a personal level?
So on a personal level, I have very strong dharmic values. I've been brought up and raised with dharmic values, and that is those values of the importance of family, the importance of things like ahimsa, which are very important in non-violence, looking at hard work ethics, working hard, and also principles that can kind of help contribute towards shaping our theory, if you like. And the book that I wrote about broken politics was particularly focusing on how integral humanism, which is a philosophy based in India, how that can be used potentially in the UK, and how that can be evolved and looked at further, which was a philosophy that expanded itself to move away from capitalism and communism and to look at a sort of almost a third way in how we can approach certain issues. And it's a bit more deeper than that, but I think those dharmic principles and values that follow me personally, it's interesting to see how that can be expounded and developed into political ideas and political thinking. And certainly the issues we see around the world, such as climate change and problems with the environment, it goes back to the root of ahimsa and various things where we are potentially destroying the environment, and those are intrinsically dharmic values. Looking after your environment, looking after and cleaning up your neighborhood, and doing that, rolling up your sleeves and working together with your community to do that. I think those are strong dharmic values which follow me certainly, and I'm exploring it at a more deeper theoretical level.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, just on that note, we were almost coming towards the end of our conversation, Kishan. So maybe we can have your message for other fellow British Indians who form the Living Bridge, which we had talking about today. What would you say to them about getting more politically active and who want to make a difference, but maybe just don't know exactly how? So
I think that it's very important to know that you can be active in very different ways. It's not just one way to be active. I think that you need to. I explored all different political parties before I selected one that was more familiar to my views. I think that's quite an important thing to do. And it's going out there. For young people, should be exploring views, visiting different organizations, seeing how they operate, and formulating their ideas and formulating where they stand with certain issues, and also being active can mean, like I said, different things. It could be getting involved in your local community organizations. It could be getting involved in your local sports community. It could be getting involved in science projects. It could be getting involved in religious organizations. Whatever floats your boat, if you like. Those are the kind of things that they should be looking at, and from there you really do get a good understanding of how things happen. Because on the grassroots level, if your local sports facilities require funding, from the government, how do you go and make that connection? So I think small things like that, and understanding the process and procedure for it is just as important. And you can see it enriching lives, enriching communities. And I think my biggest advice is just get involved. Get involved. It doesn't have to be at national, global level. It can just be very small, local level stuff. And I think that if you start there, you'll get a better understanding of things, and also develop your skills so that you can. And that's very important. Develop your skills so that you can make positive contributions to society.
Great. So there is the central message there then, which is just go for it, even if it's no matter how small a task it is. It's about getting started, I guess. So we'll take a quick break here. We're almost out of time, but we'll come back and see if there's any burning questions you have for Kishan, and we'll take them up before we wrap up. But opt for a quick break.
iEntertainment is brought to you by iGlobal for all the latest film and series reviews, story interviews and cinema listings covering Bollywood and beyond to reflect a truly pan-Indian entertainment spectrum. Check out the latest at iglobalnews.com.
And we're back. I will just check with our team in case there are any questions coming in, which we'll take up. But Kishan, I just before we go ahead and wrap up, I just wanted to thank you for being with us today. We've had a really fascinating discussion. I mean, it started with some really heavy-duty, serious legal topic questions, which I myself know a little about, and I feel like I'm more equipped now. I know more about the idea of mediation and how it's there as a good option for us to explore. And I'm sure we'll also be looking into your book about getting into politics, which I think each of us, it's important that we get involved in some way. We can't all just sit in the sidelines and complain. There's also things to be done. But Kishan, any final words from you? Maybe where and how people can get in touch, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, thanks. I'd like to say thank you, Aditi, and for iGlobal News for having me on today. Really appreciate coming. Yes, if you want to, feel free to stay in touch. You can find me on my law firm website, or you can find me on Taylor Rowe's website. My email address is just my first name. That's Kishan.Bhatt, BHATT, at Taylor, TAYLOR-rose.co.uk. My number is 0203-004-5472. Feel free to get in touch. I'm very happy to help with any questions or queries you might have.
Great, and you can always get in touch with iGlobal as well if you want to have some further questions for Kishan. And now we'd say goodbye to you, Kishan. Thank you so much again for joining us today. So, folks,
thank you very much.
Thanks. So, folks, that's the end of the show today. Remember, you can always play back this session or any of our other sessions. You can find them under the video section of iglobalnews.com. And of course, if you stay tuned on our Facebook and YouTube channels. And meanwhile, please do keep your feedback, comments, questions, inputs coming in, along with your entries to our iGlobal Diwali Essay in Photography competition. The email address for that is info@iglobalnews.com. That's info@iglobalnews.com. And now it's time to bid goodbye. Until the next time, see you. Bye.